Give us your top-line thoughts as to how you see the economic recovery in certain parts of the world progressing. Certainly, on one hand, you have the China recovery story, perhaps not as resilient, not as consistent as we'd been hoping for, and the fight against inflation and the risk of policy missteps ever heightened as well elsewhere.
Hi. There's a dangerous shortage of growth outside China, and even it is feeling it from the rest of the world. That's in large part because investment isn't going into the right places. You have basically a misallocation of capital where it goes into a narrower and narrower group of governments in the advanced economies. They're borrowing huge amounts of money, and then big corporations. And so you don't get the dynamism in the global economy that you really need to get growth going. We've got global growth below 2%, falling below 2% here in 2023, and into 2024 continued slow growth.
And of course, at a time like this, it becomes more urgent than ever to deal with the issue of debt distress and debt restructuring when it comes to poorer nations. Can I seek some clarification on what was agreed to with China at the last round of negotiations? You mentioned this idea of new concessional funding from the World Bank. Is that not what the bank already does? Can you give us some details on these new commitments?
It's a commitment by the World Bank to have concessional funding, and you're right that that's already happening. But that makes it, from a net present value standpoint, the World Bank is putting in funding that lowers the burden for developing countries, for the poorest countries. And so the ask to China is that they do the same, and that would lead to debt restructurings that actually get done. Right now, it's a stalemate.
What about fighting inflation? Should the Fed be done? Is the Fed done fighting inflation and having to do those aggressive rate hikes that exacerbate this problem of mismatch, that have caused other countries to try to match it? And maybe that's one of the things that is also not so great for developing countries.
I'm not sure that rate hikes actually causes inflation to go down. What causes inflation to lower is more production, supply and demand, and so you need to have more supply. If all you have right now is the effort through higher interest rates to bring down demand, that hasn't been working. We see high demand, consumer demand in the U.S. I think the Fed should, and central banks in general, should be using more tools, not just the rate hike tool. That means talking about how the interaction of monetary policy with production within the economy. When you're hiking interest rates, you're reducing the production, and we saw that in the credit data today. Credit growth goes down when you hike the rates, and you get less production, and that keeps the persistent inflation that we're seeing in the core inflation numbers. Still 5.6% year over year core inflation. So these are big challenges in trying to look forward and change the way policy works so that it allows more production and lower inflation.
David, on top of all of these macroeconomic concerns, we also have a complex political landscape in many of these developing economies, whether it's elections in Turkey less than a week away to polls in Pakistan, Argentina, Poland, and so forth. How much are you weighing the political instability risks in these developing economies?
These are big concerns. As interest rates go up, it puts pressure on the debt of countries that have borrowed in floating rates, and even when the rollovers come for those that have been in fixed rates. And so the debt burden's going up, and that's a fiscal strain on governments, and that points has often been pointing toward fragility. The weaker countries are clearly in that because food prices are higher and fertilizer prices are higher. And then in the bigger middle-income countries, as you named, their currencies weaken, and that adds to their own inflation and the political challenges that they face. I think we're as I say, at a dangerous point of slow growth for the world that might, if it continues, it puts more pressure on political systems really worldwide.